officially creating test cases, we need to understand a very important concept, that is the user story. A user story is some kind of information that tells us what is exactly the user want, or the details about the feature we are working on, or any piece of application or project or module that we'll be working on. The user story would tell us what exactly is being done. So for example, let's take an example of our driver post endpoint that we have been working on. And the user story says, as an insurance agent. So here we got to know that this API is going to be used by an insurance agent. I want to create a new driver with the driver first name using the driver post endpoint. So we have a kind of requirement, a high level requirement, that they want to use driver post endpoint to create a user or a driver with driver's first name and other information as well. But we do not know the details about the first name. So for that we have this table, the next piece, that tells us what are other details about the first name. So for example, it says the name of the field should be first name. Then we have the second one is data type, that tells us it can be a text, which means it can be a number or alphabets. And then description, it just tells us a little bit more about the field. And then is it a required field or not? If it's a required field, that's true. And then some additional information that tells us that the first name must be provided. It could be alphanumeric only. Special characters are not allowed. 20 max characters. And for success attempts, status code 201 received, and for error, status code 400 received. Now if you notice, we have lots of information here now, and all of these are our test cases. We're gonna make sure that if we do not provide first name, it should return an error, because the first name is a required field. Then it says alphanumeric only, so if we provide special characters in the first name, it should return an error because it should only be alphanumeric. So these are like clues, or the requirements are like guidelines that tells us what should our test case should be. So based on reading all of these requirements, I prepared some of the outlines. For example, the first one says, the test case outline says, verify the user is able to successfully save driver information with a valid first name. So if everything looks good, we should be able to successfully create. That's our happy path. If verify that user receives an error when the first name is not provided, that's where I'm testing this required field part. Third one is verify the user the first name with alphanumeric characters is acceptable. So if I provide a username or a first name with alphanumeric, it should be acceptable. But if I do not provide, it should return an error. That's where I'm covering that part. And then same thing with uh, the the character limit we are also testing. So this is how the first step would be. I would create my test case outlines based on the requirements, and then I would also gather any information. For example, I need the URL, the API URL, I need the method, and I need the token. So I also might need the other information, for example, the data and stuff. So I would gather everything, put it in my test case outline, and then I would start with the writing the actual test case. So this is just an example. If you notice, I have the API body. That's where I put in this sample data, and here is my expected result for the first test case. So in this case, user is able to save driver information successfully with a valid first name. So here I have everything correct, and if everything looks good, the expectation is I should get 200 status code, and it should successfully be created. I did not put in actual, because when we actually test the API, that's when we will put in that information. Like when I use this API body, what actually happens. That's where the actual is blank, and we're gonna see when we actually execute it. Second test case, here I have the verify that user receives an error when the first name is not provided. So if you notice here that I only have the last name, I do not have any first name here. So with this, I should receive over 400 status code. That's my second test case with the valid data. So that's how I have another one where if the first name has a special character, and here I have the first name as a special character in it. So in this case, what is the expectation? We're going to receive 400 status code. So could you guys please fill in the remaining test case and information? I will upload this document, and I would ask you guys to create the remaining test cases based on the outline. Also try to think if there is any other scenario you can test. So for example, what would happen. So for now with special characters we tested with the @ sign. What if I put in dollar sign? What if I put in ampersand sign? What if I put in asterisk? So try to come up with all of those negative scenarios and see how the API behaves. What if I leave the first name blank, right? What if I put instead of first name, if let's say I put in space between the inside the first name, what happens then? Some of the test cases we might come up with, the requirement does not tell us anything about it. So just like I said, what if there is a space between the first name? For example, if I have a first name like this, let's say, so I have float and then I have ABC. What should happen in this case? Now API might accept it, right? API might give us 200 and is successfully created. That does not mean this is expectation. It might be an issue. So if you come up with any test case that the requirements does not give you the answer, reach out to your team, reach out to business analyst or whoever prepared these requirements and ask them, what should I expect in this case? Why should I expect in that case? Because API might accept it or reject it, but that does not mean it's a valid or it's a defect or not. Defect is going to be only if it's written in the requirement, like clear guidelines are there, or someone on the team tells you, hey, that's how you should behave. And if it does not, then it's an issue. So that's our job. We should come up with as many negative scenarios as possible and make sure our API that we are working